When my kids were little, the very first thing I taught them in homeschool was opposites: tall, short, long, far, boy, girl. We all do that. I kind of joke that we spend the first couple of years teaching our kids opposites and the rest of their lives teach them to not look at life as opposites because, the whole long, far, it's relative. Short, tall, it's all dependent on how tall you are. Old, young, again, very dependent on what your age is and how old you feel. Even boy girl, science has proved now that that's not a thing. Gender is a spectrum, and people can find themselves any place on that spectrum. As we mature in life, we learn different lessons. The very, very young are taught to put things in very simple categories as they develop their intelligence. But by the time they get to be teenagers or adults, we expect them to have a deeper grasp of subjects and contents and comparisons. In our reading for Palm Sunday this morning, we have a wonderful opportunity to look at opposites in the gospel, but look beyond the opposites because we're not asked to have the faith level of those really small children. That's our entry level for all of us, but we're asked to grow much beyond that. But Jesus recognized that we had to be children in our faith first before we matured. And so he comes into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday in a world of opposites. People were expecting a king. He came in very, very humble. They were expecting a whole parade of people with banners and military and musicians, and maybe acrobats, and who knows what else would be part of the entourage. And in fact, he only came in with his followers and the locals, children who started picking up branches and waving them around. People who wanted to follow, wanted to learn what this is about. Very simple, regular, humble people. Kings came into town on horses. Jesus sent his friends to get a donkey, and he came in riding a donkey. And yeah, there's a whole lot of prophecy in the Hebrew scriptures that talk about this is how the king is going to appear. But even without that, we have very clear statements that Jesus was not going to be that king, that Messiah, that type of Messiah, that Redeemer that so many of the people were expecting. Because they were expecting someone who was going to essentially be a warlord, to come in and get rid of the Romans. That's why everybody was so tense. That's why the Pharisees ran up to Jesus and said, "Get these people to calm down. They cannot be screaming that." The Pharisees knew the city was full of Romans. Every festival they had, the Romans were there because they'd all heard the prophecies. They'd all heard the expectations. They'd all heard that a Jewish person, a Jewish man, was going to be coming and claiming the King of David. They all knew, and they expected it. And when Jesus came, Jesus wasn't what they expected. Initially, the language was wonderful. They were all there celebrating. They wanted to see who this was. They heard the rumors that Jesus finally was entering. They could wave their palm branches. Hosanna, the king is here, save us. But we know how the story goes. And I'm not going to do all of it today because we'll be looking at this throughout this Holy Week. But when we are looking at Palm Sunday specifically, Jesus brought us a world of opposites. But the opposites aren't where we're supposed to stay. So the problem with Jesus connected with kingship is that we have a very narrow image of what king is to be. We have a fairy tale image, maybe of a benevolent old man on a throne that is going to give us what we want. We just have to ask nicely. That's going to give out punishments if we've done something bad or if someone we don't like has done something bad. And it's very simple. Again, very much at the level of children understanding this world of right or wrong and that some people have authority over others. Or we have a modern sensibility of kingship, and we look at the leaders of the nations we have. We look at Queen Elizabeth, and we look at the princes who run countries, and the princesses who are just honorary. But they're all very well treated, and they're very removed from the people. They have all the luxury in the world, and yet they're not with the people that they're supposed to rule. So these images go through our head anytime we hear the King, Christ the King. It's a very simplistic image. It doesn't work for us. And Jesus came in to usurp that image, to be almost the opposite, to undermine completely what it is. And see, that's when you know you are getting into a deeper Christian faith. When you can take some of the simplistic ideas, delve down into them, work a little harder into them, and find out more truths, more revelations, more understandings of who Jesus is meant to be for us and for the world as a whole. Jesus very much did not want to be the king, had no claim to the throne of David, had no desire to posture and have great praise. In fact, he was so not in command of what was going on around him that we hear that the Pharisees snuck up to him and said, "Please shut these people down." And Jesus said, even if they stopped their shouting, the rocks would rise up and do that. The message of Jesus coming, it's in every pore of our being. It's in everything we do. We cannot put Jesus on the throne and the pedestal away from us, thinking that to be people of faith, it's a very simple matter of behaving properly and eating properly and dressing properly and appearing properly. That was never part of the faith. That's never what the ask is. Jesus came in the opposite of what we all expected, usurping the expectations, undermining, flipping over what was expected of him. He comes in just like us. And see, that is the magic of it. That on Palm Sunday, we're able to get out there, wave our branches, see that Christ is coming, recognize that he's just like us, and then start to dig down a little bit. If he's so much like us, then what is he saying that matters to us? What is he showing us to do that he's also doing? What is he teaching us that we now have to follow? Where do we have to dig down? Where do we have to find out what's what? This is the last Sunday in Lent. We've been doing this now for 6 weeks, being on this journey, getting us here to Holy Week, which is the darkest week of our Christian faith. But we've come as people who have looked at ourselves, who are ready now to go a little bit deeper, a little bit harder into what we believe. We can no longer be simple faith people. It is not good enough to believe in an old man on a throne. That was Zeus. That's never been God. Jesus came in human form so we would understand this. And everything Jesus asks us to do is the opposite of what has been asked by society. The opposite that those in power want us to behave like. So when Jesus comes in, not in grand robes, but in regular ordinary clothes, he's meeting us where we are and getting us to walk on that journey. As we continue to walk through Holy Week, please find your place where Jesus is asking you to grow your faith, be more than a simple understanding, a simple explanation, or a simple answer. Be the opposite of what society assumes it means to be a Christian. Be the opposite of what society assumes it means to have power and authority. Be the opposite of the really narrow, restricted understanding of who the Messiah is. Open it up. Be wild. Be open. Be there with Christ as Christ encounters his people. Hosanna. Christ will save us. Just maybe not in the way that we first thought.